In today's video, we're going to be giving you the gold standard on how to change the oil on your 6.7 liter Powerstroke V8. Right here, we've got our Motorcraft oil filter right here, picked it up from the dealer, and we're going with our AMSOIL Signature Series 10W30 motor oil. Some guys like to pop the dipstick up just a little bit. All right, next I'm going to blow a little air around the oil filter. Grit and dirt around the used oil filter, that when I take it off, I just have dirt falling down, and I don't want that dirt to fall into the new filter. So the way that this filter is mounted on the bottom here, the key is to try not to make a mess, try not to get covered in oil. Let's see if we can't achieve that goal. Loosen up my drain plug. I already loosened it off camera so it could be quick for the viewer. But that one drip coming, this oil being diesel, it's gonna be real dark. And I don't want this on my clothes or anything like that. So what I like to do is unthread it. Now that it's completely unthreaded, I can, oh, one more thing. I need to get my oil sample ready before I do that. 1 second. To try to determine. So now that I've gotten this plug right here, I'll just rip it out. Oh, still one thread again. Rip it out, get out of the way. And I got minimum oil on me, just on my glove. I'll take my drain plug, stand it up like so, and I'll set it down not to get any of the dirt and dust on the threads. Now, get my sample ready. As this pours out midstream, I'll go ahead and try to catch some of this without making it, again, a mess. There we go, full sample, lid it, close it up tight, and we'll clean this off after. But I got my sample sealed in nice and tight, and that'll be that. We got our sample. I can now take my large drain pan and move it over to be in a position that can catch the oil filter. All right, filter wrench on. Move this up a little higher, get a better angle. Okay, got it hand tight now, I think. All right. And again, this is a messy one. Seal just broke. Oil should be coming. I'll try to keep this from dropping down rapidly by putting a finger on it, turning it off as it drops down. There it goes. And my filter's off. Dump it out. Drop it in the oil. And then I can just let that drain. So the oil's drained for a period of time, and the oil filter housing is no longer dripping. Now keep in mind, we did clean that area before we took it off. So the only thing that really should be there is residual oil from the change. Swinging up over here to our oil filter, we have the option to either pre-fill or not, and that is the controversy. So if you pre-fill, then you're shortening the amount of time that it takes for the oil to reach the engine, but you're potentially introducing a contamination of unfiltered oil to the engine, being that your filtered side of your oil is going to be the center hole. Now, if you are not very clean about that housing, and dust and dirt potentially falling in, it's kind of controversial. If you fill this thing up and make it heavy, and you're going underneath the truck, you're lifting it up and you're you slip and drop it, or somehow that dirt gets on that filter, well, then you could potentially see some issues. So at the least, we need to, I'm trying to do this with one hand, but at the very least, we need to put a little bit of oil on here for the sake of the O-ring, but to fill it, it's really up to the end user what level of risk they're willing to take. It doesn't really matter. The engine was just ran. We're not doing a cold oil start or oil change or anything. There's enough lubricant in the engine to prevent a dry start. So it's not like this engine is going to be dry when it starts up. Another thing to consider in pre-filling your oil is it can give you a little bit of a sense of a false leak, because this oil is on the rim. If you look right there, that oil sits on that rim, and as the vehicle gets hot and it runs, it can potentially leak a little bit down the side of the oil filter. Now here's where you can get contamination, is if somehow dirt from this chassis is allowed to fall into this engine. If I bump it and a piece of dust or dirt or whatever can fall down, that is a actual risk and concern. So we creep in here, trying to hold this camera and this filter at the same time. And that's where you make the argument that it's better not to fill it, because you could be way more clean with an empty filter, that you handled less, that you can just install on the truck. Now, another controversy is, do you use a wrench or by hand? The answer to that is either or. Now, if it's slippery, how it is now, a wrench could be used. But in my case, I could also use a rag to just have a better grip, because just my grip without the rag is not enough, in my opinion. With just oil on the outside of that filter, I'd like to have a rag to get it hand tight. And I'll actually give it a good crank, ugga-dugga with the hand. And perfect, I got my Motorcraft logo pointing to the outside. And with that, we've got our drain plug, and it's been positioned in a way to where it will not be in dirt, potentially bringing contamination and dust into the engine. And we're going to go ahead and install that back into the oil pan, and I'm going to put our wrench on that and tighten it up. Now, how tight does it need to be? Well, it needs to be tight enough to not come loose from vibration and not strip from being over torqued. And we're going to a steel pan with a steel nut, 5/8 wrench, not that long, so the leverage isn't that much. I'll go ahead and give it a good turn, and it's tight, but it's not going to come loose. So that's it for our torque, and we are almost done under here. One more thing that we can do is we can spray cleaner around this oil filter right up in that lip. This will prevent the oil from dripping down the oil filter and giving us the presumption of a false leak. Get right in the crack and spray that out. Clean up the oil filter, clean up the drain pan, so that things will be clean, and it can even take some compressed air to that. blow that rim out. Blow back the other way. More quick spritz so it's nice and clean. And that's that. So what that actually does is it keeps that oiliness and dirtiness away, and it lowers the amount of dust and grit that is going to be attracted to that area. So the next time you change the oil, it's not as greasy and dirty and carrying abrasives that could potentially be even around that oil filter housing the next time you change the oil. So now it's time to fill our engine with the AMSOIL 10W30 Signature Series full synthetic oil. Now we have 16 quarts here. When I look online at the capacity, you can come up with a few different answers for your capacity. This site, powerstroke oil capacity information from Bulletproof Diesel, says 17 quarts. Ford says 15 quarts. What I found is 15 to 16 quarts on this particular 23 450 is about the sweet spot. Now you could probably get 17 quarts in here, although it might not say that in the manual. Double check your manuals for your capacity, but I think when you take the quarts of the oil for the capacity of this oil on this particular engine to its maximum on the dipstick, I think you end up with the oil being closer and potentially causing more problems with the windage compared to before. Let me take this call. Okay, so the first 4 quarts are in, and we're going for the second 4 quarts. Okay, so the first 4 quarts are in. We're going for the second 4 quarts for a total of 8 quarts. And like I say, the capacity on this thing is anywhere from 15 to 17 quarts. If you put 15 quarts, you might end up in the middle of the operating range. We'll find out exactly where. But on these engines, I think it's okay to be in the middle of your operating range. If you're going to get the very top highest mark on your dipstick, you're going to be putting more oil than the manufacturer recommended. And I just think with these particular engines, they are wanting you to fill the oil to be in the operating range, right in the middle of the operating range, not necessarily going to the top of the operating range. Because when you're at the top, you might rob yourself a little bit of horsepower just because your rotating assembly is going to be closer to your oil capacity, or oils closer to the oil in the sump. So being that this engine, that's the whole thing around the whole dry sump oiling systems, because the closer that rotating assembly gets to the oil, it increases the potential for it to rob power. So there's the first 8 quarts, bringing it to 12. Getting the last one ready. And the gallon jugs are just easier to handle. Okay, so we got about 15 quarts or so, give or take, in there. We've got about a quart left in our last jug. I'm gonna go ahead and check the oil. It really doesn't matter yet until I start the engine and prime the rest of the system. Despite us filling that oil filter up, it's still going to need to prime the system a little bit, but nonetheless, this is where we are without starting. We're at the top of the mark at 15 quarts without starting. Now, once the engine started and that oil gets circulated through, keep in mind we got a real good drain on the system. Circulate that oil through and we'll know our true capacity. Okay, and starting up the engine. Engine running, we can pop underneath and check for leaks. Now, the way we change our oil, we've never had a typewriter tick or anything like that with the AMSOIL, with the pre-filling of the filters. When we do pre-fill the filter, everything seems to be just fine. I think the consensus right now is that pre-filling the filter is a good practice. I know it's been something that's been going back and forth, whether you watch Dave's Auto Center or Ford Boss or any of those, you know, it's something that's going back and forth. So now we can see our oil filter is clean. It's not dripping, leaking, nothing like that. Maybe a slight little something there on the bottom, we could wipe that off. Clean that up. A little wipe here on the drain plug. Leave things nice and neat. We've run the engine now. We got 15 quarts in there. Let's go ahead and turn it off. So the engine's now off. It ran for about, I don't know, 30, 40 seconds. We are now going to allow the oil to settle so that we can get a good reading of our oil level. But in the meantime, I've cleaned off my I got to put the component ID on it and the date, 0. I've cleaned off this oil filter sample and we are going to send this off. Now we've been testing this oil for a while now. We've tested Hot Shot Secrets 5W40, AMSOIL's 0W40, AMSOIL's 0W40 again, and now we're going to be testing our 10W30 going in. I'm really curious how this 10W30 is going to burn off, how it's going to handle fuel. With the 540, we get the fuel in the oil, and it ends up bringing our viscosity down to about where this starts off at 10W30. So I'm curious if is this gonna do the same thing? Maybe it has less fuel in the oil, I don't know. But the 0W40 has been really good oil, except you have trace amounts of metals from maybe the bearings, but it's nothing to be worried about. It's very minor. Keep in mind the engine's maybe a little bit new. It's got 45,000 miles. I'd imagine it's broken in by now. But yeah, I'm very curious, does this do better or not? So let's go ahead and check the oil now. Okay, so the sample is now taken, and now the engine's run is settled. I'm going to pull this out, wipe off this stick, and check our level. Back in there. And check our level. And looking at that stick, we're right there at 15 quarts. We're in the middle, just under the middle of the operating range. Now, what do you do with that? Do you fill that oil up with another maybe 16 to 17 quarts? So add another 1 to 2 quarts? Or do you leave it right there at 15? For our purposes, we'll leave it right there. It's what the book says. And we're right in the operating range, just under the middle, but we're cold. So once things were pretty hot, like fully hot, maybe things go up just a hair. Oil can expand quite a bit. And in doing so, this gives me room for expansion. If I were to take this oil at this temperature and go to the top of that stick, well, is that really better? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe once it gets hot, it gets up there a little bit, and that's why they left all that room for expansion. So let's go ahead and leave it at that. We got our 15 quarts in there. That's what the book says. So that's what we'll roll with. But anyway, let me know what you guys thought about this oil change process. Only thing I gotta do now is just clean up the mess. Gotta dump this oil that we have here in this jug, but that's about it. But let me know what you think about this video. Follow along if you want to see the results of this oil analysis. We've also done oil analysis on our 7.3 liter V8, and we've played with viscosities with that engine as well, where we've increased the viscosity. We do all type of installs on our trucks. We just did one that turned out pretty cool on this truck. I'm going to show you guys. Let me know what you think. But we put these power points here on the dashboard so that things can get charged up. These plugs are always hot. And let me unplug this so you can really see what's going on here. They're always hot, and you can charge your devices. When the phone is on the mount, it can charge without even having the cord running in your way. You can just put it right there and go like that. And now it's charging. Comment below, let me know your thoughts. This is DS Trucks. My name is Sean. See you in the next video. Over and out.